Susan's fingers brushed a chipped mug tucked behind spice jars, sun-faded, with "World's Okayest Mom" scrawled in sarcastic cursive. 50 years old, knees protesting Sydney's summer humidity, she remembered buying it on a whim after her first hot flash, back when menopause still felt like a prank. Now, beach BBQs left her sweating like a stolen mango, and her daughter's eye rolls stung worse than night sweats. But that mug. It whispered rebellion. Next morning, she signed up for a herbal tea workshop, because if life Susan's fingers brushed a chipped mug tucked behind her spice jars, its faded sunflower pattern whispering of beach BBQs and Sunday mornings when life felt less like a wobbly ladder and more like solid ground. 50 had arrived with all grace of a seagull snatching a chip, messy, inevitable, leaving her flustered. Nights were now a battleground of hot flashes, her body betraying her with precision of a Sydney summer, sweltering when least expected. She'd stumbled upon herbal tea workshop flyer outside a Surrey Hills cafe, its promise of natural vibes clashing with her skepticism. Menopause wasn't some candlelit spa day, it was a rogue wave, dragging her under just as she'd finally learned to swim. But that mug, her ex-husband's parting gift, of all things, seemed to nudge her. Try. First sip of dandelion tea tasted like bitter earth, but by week 3, something shifted. Mornings carried less fog, nights fewer fires. She laughed herself, a woman won over by weeds, yet there was power in rewriting script. No helpless victim here, just a blonde force of nature sipping rebellion from a chipped cup, her rhythm returning like tide against Bondi's shore. Susan's fingers brushed a chipped mug tucked behind spice jars, its faded sunflower pattern whispering of backyard BBQs and half-forgotten laughter. 50 hadn't snuck up on her, it had barged in like a kookaburra dawn, leaving hot flushes and sleepless nights in its wake. One desperate evening, she'd steeped dandelion roots on a whim, gagged bitterness, then blinked when her racing heart stilled by third sip. A week later, curiosity led her to a herbal tea workshop above a surf shop in Bondi. Sand still clung to her sandals as she climbed creaky stairs, expecting granola vibes. Instead, she found Mara, a silver-braided Maori herbalist with a laugh like crashing waves, who tossed dried petals into a mortar with flair of a bartender mixing cocktails. Menopause. Mara snorted, grinding rose hips. Nature's way of saying you've leveled up, love. Creator fumbled measuring juniper berries, sending them rolling like rogue marbles. Mara just winked and handed her mug, now repurposed as a measuring cup, its chips proof it had survived decades of dropped cake batter and clumsy moves. By sunset, she left clutching a muslin bag of her own blend, dandelion for balance, mint for fire, a whisper of licorice for sweetness stolen back from time. Mornings became rituals. She'd cradle that mug on her balcony, watching ibis pick through duet grass, no longer dreading flushes, but riding them like waves. When her book club teased her new witchy phase, she smuggled in a thermos of her brew. By meeting's end, 3 women scribbled recipe on napkins. One evening, she spotted Mara a beach barbecue, flipping snags on a grill while arguing with a fisherman about turmeric's merits. Susan joined them, her old mug dangling from a carabiner on her bag, a talisman now, its cracks proof something broken could still hold warmth. Laughter bubbled up as she realized, 50 wasn't an ending. It was steeping. Susan's fingers brushed a chipped mug tucked behind spice jars, its faded sunflower pattern mocking her half-hearted attempts optimism. 50 years old and suddenly sweating through sheets like some hormonal teenager, ridiculous. Sydney's summer heat didn't help, but blaming weather was easier than admitting she'd spent 3 months Googling symptoms instead of facing them. Beach BBQs with friends became minefields. Laughter over prawns would twist into silent panic as another hot flash hit, her grip tightening around sweating beer bottles. Everyone else seemed fine, tossing salads while she fought urge to dunk her head in an esky. Then came Marjorie from book club, wrinkling her nose Susan's third espresso. Darling, you're vibrating like a dropped phone. A pause. Ever tried dandelion tea? Susan scoffed, until insomnia had her scraping internet 3 a.m. Turns out, dandelions weren't just lawn invaders. Root tea balanced hormones, leaves eased bloating, and whole plant had audacity to grow anywhere, stubborn as her refusal to just accept changes. Next morning, she marched past baristas to a herbalist's workshop in Newtown, where a woman with rainbow braids handed her a steaming mug. Bitter? Susan winced. Like my ex's karma, herbalist deadpanned. That mug became her battleground. She burned batches, oversteeped others, once mistook oregano for dandelion leaves, disaster. But each failed brew chipped her resistance. Slowly, mornings shifted. Less frantic gulping of coffee, more deliberate sips as dawn light hit her balcony. She noticed things, how steam curled like her mother's cigarette smoke used to, how warmth seeped into stiff joints. One evening, watching surfers carve waves below, she realized flushes had dulled. Not gone, but quieter, like background static instead of a scream. Menopause hadn't vanished. But neither had she. Susan's fingers brushed a chipped mug tucked behind her spice jars, its faded sunflower pattern whispering of forgotten summer picnics. 50 years old and knee-deep in hot flashes, she'd scoffed herbal remedies, until desperation led her to steep dandelion roots in that very mug. 3 sips in, her jittery limbs stilled. A fluke, surely. But next morning, Sydney's brutal humidity didn't spark her usual sweat tsunami. Emboldened, she marched into a beachside barbecue, mug in hand, ignoring raised brows as she raved about weed tea between snags on grill. A yoga instructor sneered, calling it hippie nonsense, until she shoved mug into her hands. One skeptical sip later, woman's shoulders dropped. Bloody hell, she muttered. Crowd leaned in. 2 weeks on, she stood before a packed community center, hosting her first herbal workshop. Hands trembled, until she gripped that sunflower mug like a talisman. Menopause doesn't own us, she declared, tossing dried dandelion petals into steaming water with a dramatic flourish. Someone's phone caught her mid-pour, golden liquid catching sunlight like liquid courage. By dusk, clip had blown up, local moms, skeptics turned stands, even a wellness influencer raving about that tea witch from Bondi. As cheers erupted, Susan smirked, spotting her old mug front row on a now-converted skeptic's lap. Tiny victory. Maybe. But heat rose in her chest, not a flash, but fire. This is my start. Susan's fingers brushed a chipped mug tucked behind spice jars, her grandmother's, forgotten for years. That afternoon, she brewed dandelion tea in it, skeptically sipping while Sydney's summer heat pressed against her windows. Hot flashes had been hijacking her days, but by sunset, she noticed something, calm. Not a miracle, just a quiet shift, like tide easing out. A week later, she signed up for a herbal tea workshop at a local community center, half expecting crystal-wielding hippies. Instead, she found women clutching mismatched mugs, swapping stories over steaming cups, hot flushes, sleepless nights, that odd habit of forgetting why they'd opened fridge. Susan laughed louder than she had in months. By workshop's end, she traded tips on turmeric blends and beach barbecue remedies. Turns out, cold hibiscus tea beats beer for cooling down. That chipped mug became her sidekick. She hosted backyard tea circles, guiding newcomers through steeping rituals, nodding as their shoulders relaxed. Even her skeptical sister, a diehard coffee addict, surrendered to roasted dandelion roots' earthy vibes. Menopause hadn't dimmed Susan, it had handed her a megaphone. Now, her kitchen shelves groan with jars labeled in messy Sharpie, mood lift, bone brew, flash freeze. Some days, she still forgets her keys, but never her mug. It's a tiny rebellion against invisibility, a reminder that growing older means growing bolder. Steep your comeback. Sip it slow,